Who was so excited about their first pre-cal test? I'm sure y'all were. Alright, so this isn't for a grade, it's just to get tickets, and it's a good review and introduction to some of these graphs that we're going to be learning about in pre-cal. So let's start with this first graph here, just this quadratic, this parabola. Number one of the functions y-intercepts falls between 6 and 7. So remember, y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So right here we can look and see that this graph crosses the y-axis at 1. So that is not between 6 and 7, so that would be false. Okay, now let's look at the next question. F2 is equal to F4. Well, F2 and F4 are x values because this is in function notation, and so if we input a 2 into the graph, I would be at 5 on the y-axis, and then if I input a 4 into the graph, I would also be at 5 on the y-axis. So since these values are at the exact same y value, this is true. Okay, now question 3. F6 is greater than F5. So if I input a 6, I would be at 1 for my y value. And then if I input 5 for my x, my y would be about 3.5. So I can see that f of 5 is actually greater than f of 6. So this would be false. Okay, next question. The function reaches a maximum value at x equals 3. So right here, when x equals 3, we do have a maximum, so that one's true. Domain and range, y'all's favorite. I know how much y'all love that. Just kidding. Okay, remember, domain is all of the possible x values. So this graph, from left to right for all the x's, actually just keeps growing and growing and growing. So that would be true. It's all real numbers. Remember, that's what that fancy R means. And then for the range, my highest y value is about 5.5, and then it just keeps going down and down and down. So this would be negative infinity, and then it goes all the way up and stops at 5.5. So that would be true as well too. Okay, let's skip over here to the next one. The y-intercept of this function is 0, and that is true. It does cross the x-axis at 0. The domain of g of x can be described as 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 10. So my first x value starts at x, and then it goes all the way to 10. And all of my x values fall between 0 and 10, so that's true as well. Okay, number 3. Between x equals 2 and x equals 4, the function has a slope of 1/2. So here's x equals 2, and here's x equals 4. We want to know what the slope is. Remember, which is rise over run. Well, just looking at this, between 2 and 4, I know that this is a decreasing slope, or it's negative because it's going down. So because it's negative, I automatically know that this has to be false because it's not positive 1/2. Okay, and then question number 4. The function reaches a minimum value at x equals 8. So if I'm looking at this graph, I can see that this graph decreases at x equals 8, and it does look like a minimum value, so that would be true. Okay, let's move to the bottom graphs, and let's start with this one about temperature. So the graph shows the temperature over a period of 24 hours. So number 1, the temperature ranged from 40 degrees to 80 degrees. So my degrees is the y-axis, and if I look at this graph, I can see that the lowest temperature is 40 degrees, and the highest temperature is 80. And then everything else fits between those two values, so that would be true. And then number 2, the temperature was dropping during the first 10 hours shown. So if we look at the graph for only the first 10 hours, that would be from 0 to 10, so just this part of the graph here. From 0 to 5, it is dropping, but then from 5 to 10 hours, it actually starts increasing again. So this would be false. Okay, last graph. The graph shows the population in thousands of people over a 10-year period. Number 1, the population reached a maximum around 4.5 years. Okay, that's not really a maximum, so this would be false. It's not the highest point on the graph. And the population was increasing between 0 and 10 years. That would be true, because if I start at 10 and then we look at, or 0 and then we go to 10, this graph is increasing the entire time. So that would be true. Okay, if you got 10 or more of these questions correct, you get a ticket. If you get all of them correct, you get 2 tickets. So good job.